And now we're talking about, a couple of feet each way in a boxing ring. And that's going to call off one of the biggest fights in boxing this year.
On Cinco de Mayo weekend. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So, Nick, we got trouble in Texas, Cowboy Stadium, Team Canelo, Billy Joe Saunders exchanging profanities in the hotel lobby. Team Billy Joe saying they're packing their suitcases and walking away, all for what is seemingly 2 feet of distance in the boxing ring. Team Billy Joe said that they verbally agreed to a 22-foot ring. Team Canelo has built a 20-foot ring, apparently according to the contract, which supersedes all verbal communication. The ring, there is no stipulation, rather, for what size the ring should be. It's a very confusing situation. The fight's in jeopardy now, and I'm just perplexed by this whole situation, man.
Yeah, very strange. And, when you have somebody like Canelo kind of running the promotion, and like he's been doing, it usually goes off without a hitch and there's no issues. And maybe that's because everybody he's been fighting as of late has been a little bit more of a B-side fighter than Billy Joe Saunders. But this one's strange.
Yeah.
I have heard it all from the boxing. Well, let me rephrase that. I think I just when I thought I heard it all from the boxing community, I hear something new, something about the horsehair gloves, the weight of the gloves, where the gloves are made, all those types of ridiculous things. And now we're talking about, a couple of feet each way in a boxing ring. And that's going to call off one of the biggest fights in boxing this year.
On Cinco de Mayo weekend.
Oh, yeah, on Cinco de Mayo. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Canelo Alvarez, this is probably ruining a lot of Hispanic people's festivities for the weekend.
Well, Mexico they show out for Canelo on Cinco de Mayo weekend. I mean, it's one of the biggest holidays in the Mexican culture.
He always fights.
He always fights this weekend. When you think of Canelo fights, it's Cinco de Mayo weekend and then usually sometime in the fall. Yeah. And then if we're lucky, we get a Christmas present from Canelo sometime in December. Yeah. But this is the staple. This is his fight. So the fact that it's in jeopardy really kind of sucks. And I kind of, when I heard this news and I saw what happened in the hotel lobby, I said, let me look at this from a fair perspective and try to understand both sides here. Clearly, I understand the side of Billy Joe Saunders for wanting the 24-foot or compromising to the 22-foot ring. Billy Joe's known for his craftiness. He's known for his boxing skill. Less than 50% knockout ratio, and most of those, or a lot of those, happened earlier in his career. Only 3 of his last 10 have come by way of knockout. So he's known for his craftiness in the ring.
The stick and move.
And so I certainly understand the advantage there. Team Canelo, they're operating within their rights, though, because I looked up what is the actual regulation size for a boxing ring. The regulation size, from what I can find online, a professional boxing ring sanctioned by a commission for a night of sporting events to take place is anywhere from 16 by 16 to 24 by 24. So anything that fits within those parameters that's a square will do.
Yeah.
Now, they're talking about a 20-foot ring that's been constructed in Dallas at AT&T Stadium.
Which is right smack dab in the middle.
Literally in the middle. Team Billy Joe is saying that you guys told us you wanted 22. We wanted 24. We compromised to 22. All of that's all fine and good. And I can't stand these, tit-for-tat sort of situations that we see in boxing just as much as you can't and just as much as the next boxing fan can't. But I do respect an agreement.
Yeah.
And if something is in a contractual agreement, then it needs to be adhered to. Yeah. And if something is a deal breaker, if something's as important as we're willing to pack our bags, get on a plane, walk away from millions of dollars, disappoint a hell of a lot of people on Cinco de Mayo weekend, and fly back home, if it's that important to you, it should have been in the contract.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be arguing about this in the hotel on fight week. I mean, that's just ludicrous to me.
Yeah, this seems very amateur. Imagine being a fan there, like, to take it all in. You stay at the fighter's hotel, and you're in there, and you see this taking place in the lobby. It must be like a surreal moment. Billy Joe Saunders and his team, if that was something that was so important to them and that was one of their true main keys to success, then they should have had it in bold letters on the contract. And if that were the case, and Canelo's team went ahead and built a ring that was too small, then of course they could have all the right in the world to complain about it and have them fix it before the fight takes place. But if it's not, if you say it's really important for you and you forget to put it in the contract, then it's kind of your fault when you go and start complaining and you find out that it's not actually going to happen there. I don't care if they fight in a phone booth, if they fight in a football arena, literally on the 100 yards. Yeah. I don't care where it happens as long as we get to see the fight. I feel like the range and the size of the ring can matter to a degree, but at some point you got to just say, you know what, this is still a fight. This is still a boxing match. And if we're nitpicking these little tiny things, eventually it just looks like it looks like you're almost like bratty in a way. Yeah. It's like I want to be as difficult of a business partner, as difficult as a professional as I possibly can be. And that's never good for the future business people that you will work with and moving forward. I can't imagine Canelo Alvarez is going to want to do business with Billy Joe Saunders again anytime soon if this fight does completely get scrapped.
Yeah, and listen, like if it says 22 in the contract and you build a 20, then Team Canelo would be in breach of the contract, and I would call them out on that. But thus far, I've not seen anything that lends to that being the actual situation here. Yeah. And, we talk about MMA mostly on this channel. MMA is our favorite sport, boxing being our second favorite. But a big match like this is one you get excited about. You talk about it. And when I compare the two sports, I think about what the UFC did during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. They had to, obviously live fights were out. So they built the Abu Dhabi Fight Island and they carried on with their international fights there. And then in Vegas at the Apex facility, they built a cage there. It's a beautiful facility. It's got its own cage, lights set up, the sound system, the whole 9 yards to put on incredible shows. They entertained us throughout the whole pandemic. But because that's not in a big arena, that's just in an office building essentially, the cage had to be smaller. But it still met the Nevada State Athletic Commission's requirements for a cage. Right. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all that matters. Yeah. It doesn't matter if this cage is this ring is 20 feet or if it's 16 feet. That's also within regulation as well. Yeah. If the bottom line are these gloves that they're wearing sanctioned and signed off on by the commission? Okay, fine. Then who cares what kind of hair from what kind of animal or what have you is in the gloves or where they're made or anything like that? Does the ring fit the parameters of a professional boxing ring and is signed off on by the commission? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Then what are we talking about here? Unless you have a clause in the contract that's completely explicitly states these are the rules, and I can demonstrate that Canelo's in breach of those rules, I have to side with Canelo on this one. I see Billy Joe's I see where he's coming from here. I see why him and his dad's looking out for him. He's looking out for his son. I understand that. But at the end of the day, you should have looked out for him when you were doing the contract. I've not seen that contract. Nobody's privy to that contract except for the people who signed it and their management team. But I can tell you, just from being somebody who's looked at a few contracts in my life, it's at least 30 pages long, and 95% of it is stuff that would never happen in a million years. They just put these stipulations in there just to be certain, just on the off chance that a hurricane runs through Texas and this happens or that happens. It's like the craziest things get put into contracts. So if it's something this big and it's this important to you, you failed in addressing it at the time when you were supposed to address it, which was in the negotiation of the contract. Yeah, and when you look at this situation, the fact that they went with 20 feet, it's probably something that went in and out of Canelo's ears when they said, we'll agree on 22 feet. Okay, yeah, for sure. And then whenever they're going in to make the thing and make the ring, and they're thinking about it, and they look back on the contract, and there's no actual specifications on the size of the ring that they need, then they go, well, I know he doesn't want a small ring, and I don't really want a big ring. Well, just tell the guys make it 20 feet, right smack dab in the middle. And, I would have to imagine that Canelo, with the, extensive professional career he has, and Billy Joe Saunders, though it's about half as lengthy as Canelo's, is still a very long professional career. I would have to assume that they have fought
in all kinds of size rings from 16 feet to 24 and back down the list. I just can't imagine why they would allow something like this to stop the entire fight from happening. And like I was saying earlier, I really don't think that, it's one of those fine lines you have to walk when you do things like this. This can either hype up a fight between these two, and maybe, this drama will, if the drama's good enough, will cause people to talk about it, will cause more tension and more hype behind the fight. But the drama has to be juicy. It has to be good. When you talk about 2 feet of ring size and horsehair in the gloves and crap like that, people don't care, and the drama's not juicy for them. So they're not clamoring for, the second edition of Canelo, Billy Joe Saunders, even though we don't see the first fight. There's certain things that can definitely make the fight bigger at a later date, and pushing it forward can kind of be a part of the storytelling and the promotional side. But if you don't have good drama, then it's just like a big letdown for the fans all in all. Yeah.
Well, also, if the later date thing works in some instances, but this instance being Cinco de Mayo weekend, it would be a huge miss if they built up this drama and then we're like, oh, we're going to push it off till June, or we're going to push it off till July, because this is a big boxing weekend for Mexico and all of Central America, and even in the States here. And I understand what the Saunders corner is saying. Look, we're fighting in the United States. That's Canelo's second home now. We're fighting in Texas, which is a commission that Canelo is very familiar with. He's fought here multiple times recently. The judges are favorable to Canelo, which that should never be brought up, because the judges shouldn't be favorable to anybody. By simply bringing that up, you're alluding to more problems that I won't get into, because I don't want to go off on another rant about boxing's issues. But that shouldn't even be an issue. But let's just look past this for a second and assume this fight still goes on. Let's say they make the ring. Let's say Canelo says, oh, you know what, Billy Joe, we're going to give you your wish. 22-foot ring. The fight's on. How do you see it? Billy Joe is a big underdog. He's a plus 475 underdog to a minus 750 for Canelo. But when you're talking about Canelo, that might as well be a pick'em fight, because that's about as close of odds as you're going to get for anybody against Canelo, because we've seen some crazy odds in his last couple of fights.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, this is the closest one he's had in quite some time. And Billy Joe is a very crafty, experienced fighter who does move really well. And, I think having a little bit extra feet would probably, help with his fighting style, but not enough to where I think it's going to really close the gap on Canelo. I think, truthfully, Canelo is the most skilled and best boxer in this game right now. I feel like what he's doing is kind of like, monumental. We're going to look back and go, wow, that's really impressive what Canelo's been doing. And it doesn't seem like he's kind of shying away from anybody. And the reason that this fight is important to boxing, in my opinion, is because Canelo's pool of potential opponents is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of grasping at straws to be like, who is going to fight him next? I mean, we don't really need to see any rematches, because he's getting these guys out of here. And we don't, there's not a ton of people that are very competitive at the top of the divisions that he's currently fighting in. So everybody was like looking in all these directions, and then we found Billy Joe Saunders. We're like, okay, I think this guy can actually be competitive.
He presents something new.
Right, something new, something different. He's also usually pretty good at selling fights. He's a pretty entertaining guy. And I just felt like this was the one. It was a boxing match that finally I was pretty excited for.
Yeah.
And it really sucks to see it get thrown away by something so silly.
Yeah.
Really, really silly stuff that we're witnessing here. But that's boxing for you.
Yeah. I think, and let's hope it doesn't get totally thrown out. I'm reading conflicting things.
Yeah.
I've read on some reputable news sources that the fight is off and that Billy Joe's heading back. I've read on others that Canelo said, no, the fight's on. Billy Joe has to fight. He's contractually obligated to fight.
Yeah.
We've not done anything wrong. So I'm hoping that those are are the case and not the former.
There's still a chance until they're on a plane back to England.
Until Billy Joe's got his British passport out and taken off heading across the pond. There's still a chance this fight gets made. It's only Tuesday. It's still early in the week. Maybe even by the time we've dropped this video, there'll be some new news.
Let's hope.
But talking about the fight itself, I agree with you. I think Canelo's the number one pound-for-pound boxer in the world right now. I think Billy Joe might be a little bit more technically crafty when it comes to sticking and moving and feinting and being a creative point-scoring style of boxer. As I mentioned, he's got less than a 50% finish rate. So he beats you by, outclassing you and winning round over round and compounding these decision victories, which is a perfectly fine way to fight. But Canelo has proven that he can do it all. Yeah. He can be a great Mexican boxer. He can stand in front of you and trade with the best of them. He's got an iron chin, and
also
he can
the best
put you out.
defense in the game.
Incredible slipping. I mean, he slips and he rolls with seemingly millimeters of distance between himself and the punch, but it allows him to be in the proper position to counter appropriately. And he's just been he's developed some devastating power with Eddie Reynoso these last few years, and he's in his 30s now, so he's much stronger. He looks thicker. He's bigger. I think that we're seeing the best boxer in the world in his prime. Yeah. And while I do believe Billy Joe Saunders will pose an interesting threat, I don't think it'll ultimately be enough for him to win this boxing match.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of progress from Canelo, even still as the best, and everybody kind of knows he's the consensus best boxer on the planet. I do see Billy Joe Saunders winning rounds because that's what you said. He's good at doing that. I think while Canelo's figuring him out, and they're going to be close rounds. You're not going to see him get a 10-8 against Canelo or anything like that, but I think he will be able to move around early in the fight before Canelo's fully able to dissect his game and start to close the gaps and paint him into corners and things like that. I think he'd win a few rounds, and that's more than a lot of Canelo's last few opponents can say. So I really do hope the fight happens. Fingers crossed. I hope that by the time this drops, we've got some more news and it's more positive than negative like this one. But either way, I'm always tuned in and dialed in when Canelo's stepping in the boxing ring. No matter how big it is.
No matter how big. 16 to 24. We're down for it all for Canelo. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please let us know in the comments what you make of all this drama, and do you think the fight's still going to happen? Maybe by the time we drop this video, like we said, there's some new news out, so we'll of course engage with you guys in the comments there. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, if you've enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe, and check us out on audio where you listen to those podcasts. Have a wonderful day, guys.
Peace.